There are very few CDs that I can openly say this is a masterpiece. This is a CD that I will be listening to from start to finish forever. And I believe that Trigger managed that when they released Variant, quite possibly one of the best pop albums by a 2D group ever. And it will be really hard to top the quality that this CD has from start to finish, how cohesive and how impactful this album ended up being. And the best part is that this is a conceptual album, so it is all the more exciting for me because I love conceptual albums. So in this episode, let's talk about everything there is about Variant by Trigger. Quite possibly one of the best 2D pop albums ever. Let's kick off this episode of SEIYUU Lounge. Welcome to SEIYUU Lounge, I am your host Vanessa, and today we are going to talk about Trigger's concept album Variant. This is quite the exciting CD that I bring you to talk about, and I'm already grinning because I love this a whole lot. I love all the CDs that I've been basically talking about in the series of the Let's Talk About, but this one is particularly special because I fell instantly in love with it. I revisit it constantly. It's something that I don't even notice, but monthly I get an urge to listen to this CD and I listen to it from start to finish. There is not even a single song that I skip in this CD. It's that enjoyable. And I love the whole concept of basically making a statement and showing almost an intimate look into the group and how they reinvented themselves from previous CDs, and especially from Regality, which was already an amazing album and quite possibly one of the best 2D pop albums at that time, and it made amazing things, it achieved amazing things by being the very first album by a 2D group to achieve #1 on Oricon's albums chart. Of course, Variant didn't achieve any of that, but that album really paved the way. And in this case, when Variant arrived, Variant had a lot of expectations behind. People were thinking, well, maybe this CD may get #1, maybe this CD may beat a record or set a record. It didn't. But what this CD actually brought was much more important, I believe, than setting or beating records. It made sure to showcase that 2D music projects and 2D groups specifically can release impactful albums that feel like real idols were actually performing those. I could feel the professionalism in the performances, in the edition, in the mixing. Everything about this CD is on a whole other level. And there are very few 2D music projects that have this production value and then the performances so impactful and so impressive, and songs as addictive yet as stylish as Trigger has. If you know me and you have been paying attention to what I say here on the podcast, I'm not the biggest fan of pop music just because I don't listen to pop music as a hobby. I do listen to pop music, but it's not my favorite music genre, by far. That's rock, and then there's jazz music, and then there's a little bit of lyrical music going on in there that I love a whole lot. Pop is not necessarily on my priority list, and I really don't listen to pop music outside of basically listening to that pop music for 2D groups, and of course solo artists. So I don't bring that much passion for pop music, but this album instantly captured my attention. And what do I mean with all of these conversation about me not enjoying pop music a whole lot? Is that when people don't enjoy a specific music genre, they are more inclined to not enjoy music in that specific music genre. Yet, when I listened to this CD, I instantly fell in love with it. Regardless if the SEIYUU are my favorites or not, in this case, I love all three of them, but if you put aside that, the quality of the music, the way the album is structured, the storytelling going on in there, the whole concept itself, the whole vibe, everything about this CD grabs your attention. Regardless if you like pop music or not, and in this case, that's why I told you that I don't enjoy pop music as much, regardless if you like pop music or not, this album will impact you in some way. There's a lot of epic stuff going on in here that music fans in general will enjoy. And for sure, even people like me that enjoy heavier style of rock music, heavy metal, and even more of the heaviest styles within rock music, or something a bit more melodic and more complex, such as jazz music, can enjoy this album a whole lot. And just like I enjoyed Regality, I enjoyed Variant a whole lot. The difference is, Variant is a perfect 10 out of 10 CD, or like I review on the website, a 5-star CD, because it is amazing. So let's talk about this CD in detail, and I'm quite excited to showcase it to you, but I believe most of you listening to this episode already have listened to this CD or have checked some of the songs in this CD for sure, because this was the massive talk in 2021. It was followed by one of the most intense and choreographed live shows I've ever seen by a 2D group, and it is quite impactful and impressive. So let's talk about in detail about Variant, a concept album by Trigger. There's something about this album that is amazing. The intro in piano and the beautiful way it is played, how the notes are echoing in the background. It's so beautiful, at the same time so dramatic and so impactful, so grandiose, and it really sets the tone for what awaits us in Valiant. Now, this is quite the song, and I remember when I listened to this for the very first time that first I was not believing what I was hearing. Trigger is not necessarily a group with violent types of songs, and especially a violent style of pop and having or bringing hip-hop to the table. And I was really surprised how the song kicked off with such a powerful vibe. And especially Somasato is actually leading as 10, of course, is the center for this group and the center for Valiant. He is leading the way in a legato, a dramatic legato, coming from that piano intro in The Dawn Sword of Variant, the instrumental track that opens this EP. And what we have, basically, when we are listening to this CD for the very first time, we are thinking, well, this is going to be going in an orchestral style, maybe going a bit dramatic. No. As soon as that intro goes, un, deux, trois, and you get one of the most intense and sexiest songs by Trigger. And I'm not kidding, Valiant is really aggressive, intense, really dirty in its bass line. And then it is so sexy. It's one of those songs that you listen to and you really can't put your headphones down. You can't put a pause in that song because it almost devours you. It's the type of song that really grabs your attention and takes you away from everything. And I do enjoy these types of songs that are really so well crafted and mixed to the point that you are immersed in it, you want to know more. The song has a really interesting progression that is not expected, that it's not common for 2D music projects. And when I was listening to these felt like something completely different from what other 2D groups do or other 2D franchises do, because their music was more leaning towards what idols would do, more so than what is expected of 2D groups to do. And this is something that people should know, is that when composers create music for 2D music, they follow a formula that works for 2D music. And usually the type of 2D music that follows that formula wouldn't necessarily appeal for people that listen to music outside of 2D music, outside of SEIYUU music. But there's a big reason why Trigger actually became really famous within the Idolish 7 franchise and even outside of it, is that because their music doesn't sound necessarily like music a 2D group would perform. It sounds more like music that you could put any idol group, be it a K-pop group or a J-pop group, performing, and these songs would work and wouldn't sound cheesy, weird, or cliché. This is the type of music that you would find usually for an idol group, and this works really well with Trigger. And the fact that at the same time you have 3 voice actors who have an amazing quality on the vocal end. They are so cohesive together. Working as a unit, they are impressive. And I've said this countless times before, there are only 3 groups out there among 2D music projects that have this level of cohesion. It is Trigger, Lolo D, and Growth. And these three groups actually managed to have that level of cohesion between members, in which members are covering for each other, they are making each other sound better, they are doing ad-libs in the background to highlight something that the leading person is doing. They work really well together. They also have really good producers behind them to make them or to take them to greater heights, which makes a massive difference. So in this case on vocal end, I haven't mentioned, but you already know, we have Ten, voiced by Soma Saito, Gaku, voiced by Wataru Hatano, and Ryunosuke, voiced by Takuya Sato. So you can already tell by this lineup that you have a tenor, a baritone, and a bass. You have the three main voice tones for men in this group, which makes Trigger the most complete group when it comes to the vocal range alone. I'm not even going to go down on the quality of their performances and their technique, because they have a lot, and you will listen to this album, I believe, after watching or listening to this episode. You will check the album and you will notice the quality of the performances, especially the technique, but I will highlight some things so for you to understand. In this case, Valiant is quite the impactful song. It has some of the best performances on the vocal end by this group. I love that French touch of the 1, 2, 3 to count in the exciting parts within Valiant. I love a lot the aggressive sound that comes from the hip-hop, the slowed beat from hip-hop in here, which was the very first time that the group brought hip-hop to their sound, and also the first time that the group rapped. It is the very first time. Of course, if you follow Soma Saito, for example, in the Hypnosis Mic franchise, he has been rapping a whole lot there for a long time. He's an amazing rapper as well as an amazing singer, so we brought that to this performance. But Wataru Hatano and Takuya Sato had never basically rapped before, and they did an amazing job in this song. I was impressed. I was hooked. This was a song that really brought my attention. I love the retro style 808 samples beating in the background, which is another thing that people may not pay as much attention, especially if you're not that massive geek about production and composition, and especially of 90s hip-hop. Those 808 samples playing in the background from the synthesizer are amazing. People will not pay that much attention, but I love the touch that it brings to the songs. And in this case, to this specific song. So this is a song that brings Trigger's usual sexy vibe and mix it basically with a mature, aggressive, hip-hop driven vibe, which is more urban, more intense, and it's almost like making a statement, which is quite impressive. This is quite the intro for this album. I believe that many people were listening to the intro and felt, wow, this is going to be grandiose. And then Valiant appears, and the type of grandiose or the style of grandiose that they brought was nothing what we were expecting. And you will understand how amazing this song is as soon as it starts playing, coming off from a smooth transition from the intro. Then we have Heavenly Visitor. If you enjoy rock music, you will enjoy Heavenly Visitor. This song is quite popular because it was featured in the anime series as the ending theme of one of the seasons, and it is an amazing high throttle song. It is one song that whenever it is played live and Trigger perform live, you will find Soma Saito actually mimicking a guitar when it gets to that amazing guitar solo. This is one of those songs that really gets your blood pumping. It is so much fun, so intense, so overdriven. It's the type of song that you wouldn't necessarily expect from a group that is basically all about being sexy, but it works because the lyrics are sexy. The sound is the type of danger that may be appealing to some people. At least for me it is appealing, so I can understand the appeal and the sexy vibe that this song brings, but with a more mature and edgier vibe, let's say, to it. Then we have Treasure, and Treasure, when it was released, I said that I was quite impressed with the song because it is a jazz song, and I love jazz music. I said this earlier in this episode, I love jazz music. And when it started and the brass started playing in the background and those beats and the funk and everything going on in there, this is a song that put a massive smile on my face. It's not necessarily a cliche type of song, although most 2D groups usually have a jazzier style with funky guitar riffs and a really danceable, almost Latin vibe going on in there. That's a cliche as a concept, but Treasure actually subverts that cliche in a really interesting way. because you really have a sound that if you put a professional singer performing, it wouldn't sound cheesy. And even among those songs that sound a bit Latin inspired, jazzy inspired, this song doesn't even sound close or similar. So this is something that I really appreciate in here. The focus was on delivering a song that was really addictive, really danceable, really fun as well, and bring a sonority that doesn't necessarily fit with Trigger. But when you pay closer attention, actually, Trigger are a sexy group, so Latin music is all about that smooth elegance, that type of sexiness that is classy. And I feel that this fits really well with Trigger, especially with how Trigger now are. They are a matured group, of course. They went through hell and back, and they bring a really mature, fun, and in some way grandiose sound to Treasure. And I love this a whole lot because it's not every day that you bring a really interesting, fun blend of jazz and funk music to the spotlight and make it sound as good as they did, especially on the vocal end. It is quite the performance that they give in here. And the harmonies, one thing that I love about this group is that whenever they have to sing together, they sing their harmonies in such a powerful way and in such a clear way that when you listen to the song, you can tell apart where is Soma Saito, where is Hatano, basically where is Satotaku. You can understand where they are. Of course, it is easier to tell them apart because every single one of them has a different vocal range. But when they sing together, they almost blend in a comfortable high, low tenor basically, and high baritone. And they fit really well there. Actually, Takuya Sato does those warm and strong low notes that really carry the song forward. And then Soma Saito and Wataru Hatano lead the way, and they end up with those beautiful harmonies and pitch vocals going on in there, which are unbelievable. Then we have Crescent Rise. This is a song that I hold really dear because I went to the live show, the second live, but to the live viewing in Hong Kong. I've talked plenty of times about this. I went to see the first day of the live show in live viewing while I was living in Asia. And this was a really special experience for me because I had never watched anything in live viewing, because in Europe you don't have live viewing of any live show performed in Japan, and especially in Portugal I don't even have streaming of live shows from the franchises that I love because they don't even think about Portugal. They really stop everything in France or in Germany and forget about Portugal and, for example, Spain. So I had that opportunity to watch that live, really live, but from a theater, of course. And Crescent Rise was premiered in that live. That was the very first live show, the very first day of the show, and Crescent Rise was premiered then. And I was impressed beyond words when I listened to that song. The overdriven guitars opening that song, that crescendo of tension. It is unbelievable how amazing this song is, how addictive the beat is. And once again, I keep on saying that out of all composers working with Trigger, I love a whole lot Shinosuke. Shinosuke has been doing an amazing job with them. Whenever he picks a song up to create basically something for Trigger, he delivers something amazing for Trigger. He has that group really studied well to point that he can make everyone stand out and sound good and make the whole tension and intensity of their pop sound really sound good. This is the type of song that I want more of from Trigger in the future. Hopefully they deliver something like this in an album, for example. This is an amazing song. It floored me when I watched it being performed live. I saw the live performance, the choreography for the very first time back then, and I still have that image vividly of me just staring in awe at the screen, seeing that happening and listening to that song for the very first time. It felt really, really special. So this song within this album is even more special for me, but for you, for example, you don't have this experience, but you came across this song or will come across this song and you will see how much of a banger this song is. It has a mix of industrial rock going on with pop music, which works really well. You have strings as well, you have a lot of drama, you have a lot going on in this song, and on the vocal end, it is quite the intense song, one of the most technical that Trigger has, so it's well worth checking out. Of course, worth mentioning that this is a song that doesn't have a sexy vibe. It's one of the very few that doesn't have a sexy vibe. Instead, it is a really dark song, which is interesting, fits really well with the group, which can be an underlying vibe for the group that they could explore further in the future, imagining that they could explore it further in the future. So yeah, this is a song that is quite impressive. This is a high tension song, a bit like In the Meantime was for Regality. But In the Meantime is a more of a danceable song. In this case, Crescent Rise is quite the dark, intense song, but with the leading melody by the guitar being absolutely amazing. Then we have Bada to You, which is an amazing song. This is yet another thing that the group had never tried before, which is to deliver a romantic song as a group, which they had before released a romantic song, but as individuals. In this case, Gaku released a solo song in the past, which was quite romantic, but the group as a whole had never performed a song that was openly this romantic, and especially in an R&B fashion. R&B is not necessarily a music genre that the group explores a whole lot, but it is a music genre that fits their voices a whole lot, especially Takuya Sato. I feel that he is the best one when it comes to R&B music because he has that experience from the Aopella franchise. He's a bass singer, he can be a baritone singer, he has a lot of control over his vocals, he can be really smooth and can carry a song forward just by being there in the background. He doesn't even need to be in the front to lead the song to impress you. Even in the background, he impresses you. So this song had everything to work well. Wataru Hatano is the centerpiece for this song, of course, because every time a song by Trigger is romantic, he is actually thinking about Idolish 7's manager. We all know that he has basically the hots for her, but yeah. This song is quite interesting, and this song ends up being a good way to showcase how impressive on the vocal end the group is, because they have plenty of parts when they have to harmonize together, and their chemistry and their cohesion shows in that song. It is quite a powerful one. It is impressive what they did with Bada to You. My Precious World is actually the song that follows. This is a song that is nothing alike with what Trigger had released before. When it dropped, it was a song that was featured as a special event or as part of a special event within the game, and those that were playing the game actually got a snippet of it within the game, but the song later on was released in full. And this song is quite amazing. It has many things that Trigger usually don't bring to their songs, and it starts with a dreamy, hopeful and slightly uplifting vibe, which is completely different from their alluring or sexy vibe that they bring to their songs. So in this case, the focus was more on being dramatic and conveying a story and the outcome of that story, instead of being incredibly exciting and sexy and riveting. The minimalism in the instrumental actually is welcomed because it puts the spotlight on the vocals. And this song has Ryunosuke as a center, and Ryunosuke is voiced by Takuya Sato. Now, when people talk about Trigger, people are usually impressed by Soma Saito because he can do a cappella really well, and he has done a cappella for Trigger quite a few times, especially in the anime series, and has impressed everyone. People tend to actually forget about Wataru Hatano and Takuya Sato, which I don't feel is something that should happen, because the group is amazing and each member contributes to this group in a unique way, and without a specific member, the group would sound really different. And in this case, we have Takuya Sato leading the way, and I love his voice, I've said it countless times. And if I had to say a seiyuu that really sounds sexy without putting any effort, especially singing, it would be Takuya Sato. His voice is naturally alluring, his tone and skill are naturally alluring. He has an amazing skill when it comes to driving a song forward and bringing a lot of power, but he also has a really interesting deep vocal edge to himself. He is a bass and a baritone at the same time. He is in that spectrum between both. He is an amazing singer. He is basically a hidden weapon, in my opinion, within Trigger, because people were thinking, well, he's only there to sound sexy and to basically helping the group move forward and having a really warm sound in the background. But actually, when he leads the way, and in this song he leads the way, is quite impressive. And this was something that I really wanted to see happening, because I know that Takuya Sato is really talented. He had an amazing solo career, or let's say, he had an amazing set of songs released in his solo career, albeit his solo career failed completely. And in this case, he has been impressing a whole lot with the Opella franchise, and his skills were already there when he performed this song, My Precious World. And he has his vibrato basically impressing everyone. He has a lot of power and emotion brought into the song, and people can't just move along from this song when it ends. It's so impactful, it's so emotional, it really grabs your attention from start to finish. He's that type of singer that it feels almost like he is looking at you, and you really can't break eye contact with him when he's performing. It's that type of tantalizing performance that he usually delivers. At least for me, it feels like that. I really can't take my eyes off him, or really can't take my ears off him. And in this case, he really delivered an amazing performance. But you also have an amazing job being done by Wataru Hatano. Once again, he goes unnoticed most of the times because he is not necessarily the center, but he also in some way clashes a little bit with Takuya Sato's voice, because he can also do a bass, so they both are within the same range, although they cover naturally different ranges. So he usually goes a bit unnoticed, but still in this song, what an amazing performance that he delivered. So this is really, really good. On the other hand, Soma Saito has been developing, of course, a vibrato. He has managed a way to fake a vibrato or to deliver something akin to a vibrato in his performances, and in here, he is actually deploying that vibrato. I love this a whole lot. This is something that I love a whole lot. You need to check this song. It is one of the most unique songs in their repertoire, but it fits so well with them because it has that dramatic emotional edge that the group also has, but usually don't deploy as much because they are usually focusing more on sounding sexy and being sexy. Then we have Diamond Fusion. Of course, you already know this song by heart. Diamond Fusion is quite well known. The song has been around for a long time. It was around for a long time even when this CD was released. Fans love it. I believe everyone loves it. This is one of the most impactful songs that the group has, and it is quite iconic by itself. I don't need to talk much about these because you will know what I'm mentioning. And of course the album wraps up with Diamond Fusion, which is interesting because that song chronologically in the group's history is their first song. So it is quite interesting to see these here and how it works. So it is quite interesting. Well, this was my take on Trigger's Variant. I've already told you this is a must-listen CD for anyone getting into 2D music, and especially if you are a fan of pop music, you need to check this CD. At the same time, if you like good performances, really amazing performances in terms of cohesion on the vocal end, in which all voices fit together, but all voices can work alone and be amazing, and when they are together, they even up more the quality. This is the type of group that you should check. Of course, people will say, but I don't like the Idolish 7 franchise, why should I check Trigger? Let's think about this in a specific way. Check songs by groups and don't pay too much attention to the franchises, unless it is a franchise that is doing things wrong in the way that you need to check the franchise to understand the music. In this case, the music works as a standalone within the franchise, it fits within the story, but it's not dependent on the story. So you can listen to music by Trigger without checking anything of the Idolish 7 franchise. You don't need that to understand. Of course, the CD will be more impactful if you are aware of the stories behind some of the songs, for example, Crescent Rise. But if you actually come across this CD and you are not a fan of the Idolish 7 franchise, you can also and still enjoy this CD a whole lot. I believe it's one of the best produced 2D music pop albums ever, by far, and it has some of the most iconic songs in here as well. I only have praise for this album, and I feel that this album actually raised too much the stakes for me that I'm worried that when Trigger released their third album, I may not enjoy it as much because Variant was unbelievably good. But then again, this is a concept album, and quite possibly what Trigger will release next may not be something conceptual. So a conceptual album lives in a different way from a normal album. It has a story, which is really cohesive, it has a focus, which is really cohesive, and really the songs can't stray away too much from the concept or the sound that you want to follow. Whereas in an album you can play around and have a pop song, a rock song, and you can change things around and it works really well, and the concepts can be really different because it is an album. In this case, a concept album. You are tied to a concept, so it's tighter in its presentation, it's more cohesive in its presentation. It's a massive reason why Variant is so impressive, is because it is really cohesive from start to finish. It is intense, heartbreaking, it is fun, it is groovy, and it is really an intimate, deep look on this group, and basically seeing them face impossible odds and overcome those to become successful again. So this is something that I love a whole lot about this CD. From its production to its concept to the cohesion in its delivery and even the performances by this group, this album is perfect. It is a masterpiece of quality in the 2D music universe, let's say. For me at least. And I think that most of you will think the same or agree with me in some capacity, because this album has some of the most iconic songs going on in there, and some of those are so addictive without being intentionally so. And that's something that I really enjoy. It's when a 2D group or even a pop artist, for example, creates a song which was not intended to become an anthem, becomes an anthem. Crescent Rise has become almost an anthem. And you have, of course, Diamond Fusion, which also has become an anthem. A bit like Daybreak Interlude in Regality became an anthem for the group. So those are the types of songs that were not intentionally meant to become an anthem, but they are so well crafted that people can't move along from those. They really have their attention grabbed from start to finish. Those songs end up being symbolic in a way and really making a massive impact when you were thinking, well, it's just another song. No. It actually ends up becoming an anthem and a song that you really, when you are referencing someone to a CD or, well, show me songs by Trigger, why should I check those? And you will bring Daybreak Interlude, you will bring Diamond Fusion, you will bring Crescent Rise, you will bring Treasure, you will bring those songs, and even Variant. Because those are impactful songs, and those are songs that really capture really well the essence of what Trigger is as a group. How versatile they are, how crazy they are on the vocal end, because Soma Saito, Wataru Hatano and Takuya Sato are absolutely amazing. And among the very best singers among male seiyuu, you have everything in this CD really to impress, and especially if you are coming across this CD for the very first time, in some way I envy you, because I would love to experience this CD for the very first time and fall in love with it instantly again. This is something that I love a whole lot, and I would love for more people to come across it, fall in love with it, talk more about it, and enjoy it, basically. And in this case, enjoy it even as a standalone. Even if you don't like the Idolish 7 franchise, check this album. It is well worth your time. It is one of the best crafted, produced, mixed, and performed 2D pop albums ever. I'm not even kidding. So this was my take, of course, on Trigger's Variant. This is an amazing album, a conceptual album. I love those. But I would love to know what you like about this album. If you have checked it, especially, and if you have listened to the songs in this CD, which is your favorite song and why? And what do you think about Trigger's cohesion on the vocal end? They are one of the very few groups out there in which all members work insanely well together. You really have the same level of quality among all 3 members. It's unreal. So yeah, let me know in the comments on YouTube. And remember, leave your comments as complex or as simple as they may be, and you can be featured on upcoming episodes of SEIYUU Lounge. If you enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss the THTFHQ's weekly male SEIYUU and music related content, hit the subscribe button. And if you are listening to this episode on a podcast listening platform, please consider following the podcast and leaving a review. Leaving a review is really simple and helps other people find this podcast and fall in love with male SEIYUU artists and 2D groups. I'll return next week with another episode of SEIYUU Lounge. Thank you for listening and see you guys around.